So I made some art for this one. It's kind of what I normally do: review plus art, draw a thing, talk about the movie. But my art this time came out a little bit. But if I'm being honest, the movie is also a little bit. So I think I'm gonna live with it. Hey, what's up? My name is John Bonjour. I'm an artist and a film enthusiast. I have drawn some and I would like to review some Today we're talking about I.S.S. It's a movie that just came out. I hadn't seen a trailer for it. I saw a post on Instagram. I like space movies. I figured why not give it a shot. I'm going to go no spoilers for the first chunk of this video, and then I'm going to talk about a couple of things way toward the end, but I'll give you a warning. Don't worry about it. Overall thoughts, it's fine. I expected it to be either better or worse, so I come out of it. It's fine. Like, I'm not super disappointed, but I'm also not highly recommending this movie. It's pretty well crafted. I think that's probably its best positive, is that it looks pretty good. There are times where I genuinely don't know how they shot this. The idea of shooting anything in zero gravity or to emulate zero gravity is really horrifying to me, and every time it freaks me out. I believe they went to space sometimes. And I'm aware that that's stupid, because obviously they didn't go to shoot this movie in space. They're not Tom Cruise. But there's just some small part of my brain that likes to imagine things are magical still, like I'm a child, which is why I still haven't figured out how Wi-Fi works, just that it's a magical little box that gives me the internet. Anyway, that element of the film I think is really solid. There are some impressive shots. It's well crafted. I feel like the way they move the camera is an interesting kind of addition to the whole thing. They really ground you in this space station. There's the constant hum of the life support that they address early on, and then as they're kind of moving the camera around, it feels a little bit floaty. At some points, possibly a little bit too much. I was eating wings at the Alamo Draft House. It was touch and go for a minute there. I got a little bit seasick. But otherwise, I think it's interesting. I like the way that they ground you in that. And I appreciate that this is a more grounded story. That was the thing I didn't totally expect. Knowing the general premise and seeing that it was coming out in January, I kind of assumed that this was going to be a little crazier, a little zanier, a little bit less realistic. And I'm a little torn on that, if I'm being honest. I think that there's a lot of elements to it being realistic that are really good and work in its favor. Then I also think, why? Why choose to make it feel realistic when you could have something so much more fun and interesting? It's realistic to the point where people, generally speaking, make solid, good choices. And I feel like the things where this could have become really, really good are things where it would have leaned into a little bit more John Carpenter The Thing, where if that paranoia between the two groups had been stronger, I think that would have been a lot more interesting if they had made some really irrational decisions instead of a couple of misunderstandings. I feel like the most shocking moments in this movie are also a little bit the most ridiculous, because they clearly had to get to a certain point, and up to that point, the characters hadn't acted that way at all, or even kind of suggested that they would be that way. And then they're just suddenly well, I gotta hit that lady over the head with a big trash can. It's just gotta happen. So it doesn't feel natural. And when the movie is so focused on feeling human and grounded and real, some of those things just don't really play super well. I'm torn, and I also think that the movie as a whole is a little bit torn. It wants to be this super grounded human drama, and it also wants to be this out there crazy space high concept war movie of sorts, and it can't really reconcile the two, and somehow it feels like it chooses the least interesting parts of both in most of the film. It just kind of didn't build toward anything. I also think, and this is not really necessarily a super positive or negative, but the general themes of this movie are not subtle at all. Not even a little bit. It's very clear about what it's trying to tell you. It plays its themes very much on its sleeve. And in a way, I think that that's very admirable. There's a lot of these, this could have been, I don't know if you guys saw the movie High Life. I watched half of it, didn't like it. But I feel that that was a movie that was supposed to be about a lot more than it really felt like it was. And it felt like it was just talking to nobody, but it was sure of what it was saying. And that can be fun, but that's just not this kind of movie. In that sense, I'm glad that this wasn't an A24 movie. I'm glad that this didn't have a lot of super deep themes going through, but also some are good. This feels like a Rescue Heroes episode most of the time. I was half expecting at the end of the movie for them to just look into the camera and go, "Okay, kids, what did we learn?" What's the lesson from today? For a movie about like a war between the US and Russia, but taken from the perspective of people in space, I feel like the themes should probably be a little bit deeper than, well, gosh, I love my country and he loves his country, so guess we gotta fight. That's all this movie kind of has to offer. And so in that sense, I'm a little disappointed. But I will also say, rounding out my non-spoiler thoughts, there's worse things in the theaters right now. There are worse choices that you could make. This is a solidly built film. Maybe not something I would highly recommend, not something that I think is incredible, but if you're super big into space, if you really liked the movie Gravity, you might like this one. I didn't really like the movie Gravity. I didn't really like this one. I thought it was okay. It was all right. Jumping into a couple of spoilers, just because I think that they're interesting to talk about. So if you haven't seen the movie and you would like to, click away, hit the like, hit the subscribe, yada yada. But for the cool kids who are part of the club that I'm creating called We Watched I.S.S. all the way through the club, we're workshopping the name. There's things in this movie that are, I think, unintentionally funny. They were funny to me. Like there's the fight between the Russian guy and the American guy. Don't remember their names. Couldn't give a shit. It's the zero gravity fight, right, where they're in that little hallway thing. And one of them has a drill, and I think the other one was just fists. No, he's got a screwdriver, I just remembered, because the Russian guy ends up drilling the American guy, and the American guy ends up stabbing the Russian guy. God, this sounds not awesome, huh? This sounds kind of weird. Anyway, but they end up in this like yin-yang of death floating through the air, and the movie just spends just slightly too long focusing on just that, with this loud, violin music. And it was like, I don't know, there's something about that just made me laugh. I felt like it was such a climactic moment for the movie, and I'm over here just kind of like, all right, man, cool. The guy who gets launched into space by the arm, interesting moment. I thought that was something. I thought there was an element to that I was like, cool, you're making use of the space station. That's something cool. I love that he just comes back. He's fine. He's just kind of vibing out. Like they touched on one of the scariest concepts that I can even fathom, which is you in your spacesuit with your life support, just kind of floating through space, knowing that you have a very limited amount of time and nothing that you can do. But this chose to briefly mention that, just sort of hand wave, like, wouldn't that be scary? And then go, anyway, back to these guys. And then he shows up later for zero reason whatsoever. Like he's just hanging on the side of the ship. Why? How? Why? Who cares? Like, it doesn't matter. The movie's just so focused on having the characters be where they need them to be by each point in the movie that it's like, how did he get back? Who cares? Don't even worry about that. That's for you to figure out. Like, I thought that character had served his purpose pretty solidly to be the first kill of the movie and to be this like martyr for the Americans, sort of. Thought it was, did a good job of creating some tension between the Russians because they weren't sure that they all agreed with what happened. And then he just sort of comes back and then I think he gets killed, I'm pretty sure, like almost immediately. It's kind of dumb. Like this movie's just a little bit dumb and it feels like it's smart. And then the more you think about it, it's just not really that smart. Also, one more thing and I'll get out of here. The kind of weird little epilogue thing at the end, wholly unnecessary. No, not at all needed. I think it sort of landed in an okay place, but that okay place was exactly where it had landed like 5 minutes earlier. If you don't remember, because it's kind of a forgettable movie, Kira, they say her name so many times in this movie. Kira and whatever the Russian guy's name is, they don't say his name a lot. But the two remaining survivors, they end up in like a pod and they're going back to Earth. To me, the fade to black before that section of the movie where they're just in that kind of like bubble dome looking out over the Earth that's just highly irradiated, that was an ending. It leaves on a kind of uneven tone. It leaves on this weird sort of dissonant chord. I thought that was really, really solid. And I was like, okay, you ended the movie strong. Solid work. And then they started it back up. And I was like, how long? How long is this movie? By going back to Earth, they introduced so many more questions and things that I'm like, oh, okay, I had kind of closed out that chapter. Are we talking about this? We could talk about this. I can engage you on this because I'm interested to see what would, in the credits. Bye, I guess. It feels like they had ended where I felt like they should have ended and then got some studio notes that it would be important to somehow resolve, I guess, the plot thread of like the cure. But to me, that was just like a MacGuffin to get the whole thing going. I don't care. It's not the real world. Not that I'm not willing to engage that conversation, but if you're not gonna even start, why start, right? Like why bring it up and then go, dip, I'm out of here. Also, you fully could not convince me that Elon Musk is not in this movie. It's impossible. That little guy is like a Star Trek Elon Musk, and when he turned evil, it was like, yeah, that's a guy who would rebrand Twitter to X. So anyway, that's my thoughts on I.S.S. I thought it was okay. Kind of dumb, not super engaging, but could have been a lot worse. If it's on Netflix, check it out. You know, like if you get it for free, there's a worse way to spend an hour and a half, 2 hours. Thank you for watching this video and checking out my channel. If you'd like to hear more of my thoughts on movies, comics, TV shows, nuclear war, it's totally a joke. I'm never going to ever talk about like real events, quite honestly, probably in the news, because what do I have to say? Anyway, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and comment down below what you'd like me to review next, or do none of those things because I am not your dad.